All right, here we go. In 1010 AD, Sancho, the Count of Castile, founds a religious house at Una and places it under the rule of his daughter, Tigrida, who later becomes venerated as a saint. Then dies suddenly. She dies suddenly, and the nuns fall into lax service. Sancho is determined to restore discipline to his monastic foundations. He's an ardent supporter of Cluniac reform, and he introduces them into his dominions. In 1029, Sancho issues the first revised rules and replaces the nuns at the abbey of St. Juan de Pena with a slew of eager monks. Sancho then appoints one of his own disciples, St. Odilio Garcia, as the new abbot. But Garcia dies before he can consolidate his work, and a suitable successor must now be found. The successor turns out to be Inigo, or Inigo, a saintly hermit living in the mountains of near Bilbao, who, according to legend, had become a monk and slowly risen to prior when the call comes from Sancho to give up the solitary life and take the reins of the monastery. King Sancho, has decided that Inigo, is the man that has all the spiritual qualifications for the job. But no envoy can induce Inigo to take up the task at hand. So Sancho pleads with the saintly hermit until the hermit finally relents. Inigo turns out to be an excellent choice, and the abbey under his government increases rapidly and expands. The saint's influence extends far beyond the walls of the monastery. He becomes Spain's ultimate peacemaker for the time, often ending bitter conflicts between individuals and entire communities, somehow managing to tame the spirit of violent tempers. We Spaniards do have a temper, folks. We're passionate people. Now, miracles are also attributed to Saint Inigo. For example, he feeds a multitude of people with 3 loaves of bread, just like Christ. And when a severe drought threatens a total failure of the crops, the saint prays and prays until the rain falls in abundance. Inigo's death on June 1st, 1057, according to legend, was filled with miraculous happenings, as the saint, 2 miles from the abbey, he's out for a walk, is seized with a fatal stroke. His body is carried home by an escort party that are carrying torches. Now, only the monks, no one else sees the boys that carry the saint home. They vanish mysteriously upon their arrival at the monastery. Now, 100 years later, Pope Alexander III, who canonizes Saint Inigo, concluded that these mysterious boys must have been angels. Now, our next saint of medieval Spain, Saint Dominic of Silos, was born at the beginning of the 11th century at Canas, in the Kingdom of Navarre, on the Spanish side of the Pyrenees. His people were peasants, and Dominic follows their way of life, tending his parents' flock of sheep at the foothills of the mountains. He acquires a taste for quiet and solitude, and decides to become a monk at the Abbey of Saint Milan. He works hard for reform and eventually becomes the prior. Dominic soon comes into conflict with the King of Navarre, Garcia the Great, Garcia III, when the monks refuse to give up possession of the monastery. When King Garcia comes to claim them as his own. King Garcia decides to exile Dominic along with 2 of his assistants, but King Ferdinand I of Castile gives these monks sanctuary, sending Dominic and his buddies to the monastery of Saint Sebastian at Silos, where Dominic becomes the abbot. Saint Sebastian, in a remote part of Burgos, is in a state of extreme decay, both material and spiritual decay. Dominic arrests that decay and Saint Sebastian begins to prosper and soon becomes one of the most famous monasteries in all of Spain. Many miracles were often attributed to Saint Dominic, who, according to legend, cured illness and disease via the power of prayer. He dies on December 20th, 1073. Our next saint